The Essex Shipbuilding Museum is located on Main Street in none other than the old town of Essex. For 300 years, the industry so dominated Essex that it played upon the lives of every citizen and transformed Essex into a shipbuilding factory. The shipbuilders of Essex created a tradition and a legacy that carries on still today. Established around 1668 as a small plot of land located on the basin of the Tobacco River for building their infamous two-mast schooners as well as other vessels. The Essex Shipbuilding Museum was at one point the highest volume production shipbuilding site in the United States, operating up until 1949. The shipbuilding industry ultimately carried the economy of Essex for many years. It supplied early jobs for immigrants in the 1700s and 1800s. These early family names associated with the shipyard include Burnham, James, Hobbs, and Story. This is the story of the Essex Shipbuilding Museum. In the early 16th and 17th century, Essex was baptized as Tobacco, or the Tobacco Parish of Ipswich, for its infamous location on the Tobacco River. On January 5, 1818, the inhabitants of Tobacco and the town of Ipswich met and voted to petition the Massachusetts legislature to break from their part of Ipswich as a separate town. The petition was passed on February 15, 1819. Creating Essex. Early immigrants that settled into Essex often took up one of three occupations: farming, fishing, and boat building. Shipyards and boat building became the basis for Essex. For example, the Story Yard, which is now the site of the Essex Shipbuilding Museum. Thousands of vessels have been launched from the small Essex shipyard since it began in the 1660s. The shipyard was the birthplace of American shipbuilding, lasting almost 400 years, producing nearly 4,000 vessels. A.D. Story, an infamous shipbuilder in Essex, launched 400 ships during his career alone from the 1870s to the 1930s. Among all the trade, boat building had the best effect on the economy of Essex. At the start of the shipyard, the schooners were kept in demand corresponding to the fishing market. The demand for fishing vessels from neighboring Gloucester kept production high. If the fishermen were large at sea that year, then the vessel, schooner, and dragger output was tremendous. Shipbuilders acquired the land, secured contracts such as a simple handshake, and hired men to build and produce their required vessels. At the peak of its schooner and dragger output, the Essex shipyard created a monopoly. It was the place to have a high-quality schooner built for a good price and relatively fast, and every boat was made by men with good reputations for high-quality work. The monopoly created by the shipyard carried Essex as a town. The Essex Shipbuilding Museum even built ships durable enough to be in World War I. When oak and pine ran out, the transition to steel took place. During World War I, they sent as big a vessel as that could fit in the Tobacco River over to Europe. During the early 20th century, the diesel engine was born. This simplified the technique of fishing and made the model of boats much simpler. The last big production of large-scale Essex shipbuilding occurred in the 1940s, sparked by an increased demand for fish during World War II and the post-war economic boom. In 1949, the shipyard was having trouble finding enough men to work on the vessels, as well as finding oak and hardwood pine. They officially died down as a schooner and dragger shipyard. Although they stopped putting out ships year after year, the heritage did not cease. To this day, you can still have a schooner, dragger, or a tobacco boat built. Although the shipyard could make boats for a cheaper price at the same quality, schooners were still and are expensive to have built in such classic styles like the shipyard. The Essex Historical Society and Shipbuilding Museum purchased the Story Shipyard in 1993. The yard is now the focus of educational projects and the site of boat building projects. The shipyard continues to use skills and traditions of Essex shipbuilding in their recent vessels and restoration projects. Seven generations of the Storys have built vessels on the Essex Shipbuilding Museum, or Story Yard. During the American Revolution, the British nearly destroyed the New England fishing fleet. Since capital was lacking to build replacement schooners, a low-cost, quickly built vessel was needed. A little two-mast boat, then popular for the inshore fishery, seemed to fit the bill. Because it was developed in Essex, which was then a parish of Ipswich called Chabaco, the vessel was known as a Chabaco boat. In 1998, the museum commissioned Harold Burnham to recreate one of their infamous Chabaco boats. The boat was then named Louis H. Story, Essex shipwright, carver, designer, modeler, researcher, and the town's foremost maritime historian. News of the project in Essex attracted many citizens to learn about traditional shipbuilding methods. Volunteers helped in all phases of building the vessel. The Evelina M. Goulart is just one of 7 surviving Essex-built schooners and the only one that retains her original structure. Evelina M. Goulart was a full-time dragger named after the Goulart family's sick daughter who never made it to the launching of her namesake vessel, which was built and launched in 1927. It is the only vessel of her kind to return to Essex. When the Goulart arrived at the Essex Shipbuilding Museum in 1990, it held many artifacts and old fishing materials, and even boat building tools that are now displayed at the Waterline Center located on the shipyard. The vessel was a virtue to the museum and yard because it gave shipbuilders a chance to revisit the most classical structure and base more of the latest replications on that style. Harold Burnham holds the old Burnham, Essex name. Almost every Burnham in the U.S. can be traced back to the Burnhams who settled in Essex in the 1660s. Harold's roots reach back 11 generations to the earliest shipbuilders in town. Growing up in a family of shipbuilders and a town where shipbuilding is a tradition handed down over the generations, Harold has learned the standards of the past and traditional techniques of boat building. Harold has become the head boat builder and designer, building recent boats such as the Louis H. Story, the Fame of Salem, and his latest project, the Pinky Yardell. Harold comes from a long line of shipwright and has not only a bachelor's degree in maritime transportation and fisheries, but also experience as a fisherman and growing up in a shipbuilding and fishing family. The Essex Shipyard has served much purpose in the 290 years it's been active. Whether building boats for high-seas fishing or steel ships for waging war, it has been a source of timeless tradition and has gained worldwide recognition for their schooners, draggers, and Chabaco boats.